Weight, burden, finality. There's really only one constant in life that we know of, besides taxes, and that's the end. The final chapter of things, one more big adventure to undertake just one more time. It's the concept of there being no more left to do, nothing more left to write. It's the concept of death. Death is that one weight we all carry, that one burden we're all shackled with. We don't like to think of it much when we're young. We think of possibility, think we're invincible, dream we can fly as high as a desert bird and as free as our legacy allows, leaving a trail of only greatness in our wake. But as we age, we learn. Sometimes we don't leave greatness, and sometimes we don't achieve everything we want even if we do. We're only the products of our environment, of our family, and our friends and our homes, wherever that may be. That's the legacy that we all hold, and sometimes that legacy leaves not greatness, but pain, suffering, regret. Yet still we patiently wait, still we hope and dream. We try so hard to cement our legacy, even when we falter. Even in those twilight times when the end is near, still we dream of greatness. We grow what we want to see in ourselves or our children or our communities. We wait and serve at our jobs, and we resent when others seem to have more, because we know we should have it too. Another burden, but also another adventure. One more adventure into the cavernous depths of existence, where we find lost secrets and, hopefully, freedom, even if we fall short of the goal we set ourselves. And so, in our twilight years, like Yeesha in the Bahro, like Atris and Escher in the Dunny, we don't learn that we are the least, or failures, or a terrible burden on others. No. Instead, as we look back on our lives, the legacy of pain and joy and learning we all trace on our own and together, we learn that we are more capable than we think, and that endings, however close they may seem, can never truly be written. Myst V End of Ages is, at least on paper, the culmination of a decade of stories, theories, adventure, mystery, drama, and wonderment. It was created by Cyan again, one of their last games before Uru Live failed and the company fell on hard times. The money from Riven and the franchise had run dry, trying to make the exact game they had wanted with Uru Live, and hoping more people than just the fans would like it. Unfortunately, Uru Live had failed, first on the pay-for-unlimited play subscription service GameTap, then on Ubisoft's own servers. It just didn't bring the money in as hoped, and was too ahead of its time, and thus, Uru Live shut down a second time, only a year or two after relaunching. Uru Live would go on to become MOLA, Myst Online Uru Live again, and was handed over to the fans, who crowdfunded it before crowdfunding was really a thing, just to keep it alive. Yet where they went, Cyan couldn't follow. Its funds were gone, and they were stripped down to a skeleton crew just to keep their games running, a few survivors of a once mighty franchise empire. Like the Dunny, Cyan had it all, got too ambitious over a big dream, and then quite unceremoniously, all but died in one big final expenditure, with only a few remnant ages and materials from a dead MMO to show for it. They were also begging to get out of their franchise contract, but were locked into Ubisoft's whims until the end of Uru content, since they owned the rights. And Ubisoft saw the writing on the wall. Players didn't really want an online multiplayer puzzle experience. They wanted competitive games and combat like in Modern Warfare or World of Warcraft, games that fit the era. It was 2004, and Myst as a franchise they could see was trapped in the past. Aside from longtime series fans, people didn't really want to move on from Atris's family or to explore more of the lost ancient Dunny culture. Players didn't want more Uru, they wanted more Myst, and after the rocky experience that was Myst 4 Revelation, even that was starting to come into question. It was just too ahead of its time for 2004, too ambitious, too uniquely weird to have a non-competitive online game in an angry post-9/11 world that craved action. Like the Bahro, Cyan's great power was chained in a dying era, and they desperately wanted to reclaim it and escape to recoup losses before the end. But there was one thing that could be done, one more option that could help Cyan and Ubisoft escape from this unfortunately failed and too ahead of its time MMO. There still were remnants of Uru Live left over, a couple ages and some models that they could use. There were still loose ends about the Dunny that needed to be answered to. There were still the Bahro and their fate, a mysterious species that barely got the chance to spread their wings in Uru Live. And there was still the idea of an older, more world-weary Yeesha in a Myst or Uru game that hovered phantasmally, like the promise of a new tree that could help the ailing empire of Myst. And so, instead of trying to breathe new life into the dying Caverns again, or trying to write a new release on involving Atris's story, they rapidly took what they had, assembled the pieces of ages and concepts once teased to fans or almost developed for Uru Live, and wrote a new plot that tied all the loose ends together, finally bringing Uru into the Myst family in full. A story and a game that, though rough, managed to be coherent and feasible, at least somewhat. The results of planting this strange amalgamated burden of a seed was Myst V End of Ages, and while it wasn't perhaps everything that was hoped for, it was a unique experiment in trying to keep a franchise alive, just one last time. Myst V doesn't quite feel like a Myst sequel, but a continuation of Uru, which makes sense. After all, it was cobbled together from some new material, but mostly from long-in-progress ages as a callback to the fans, some of which were meant for Uru but never got off the ground. But it's also not quite like Uru in terms of plot, giving us a story much more suited for a Myst game. And of course, the Myst franchise is famous for always pushing the limits, always trying new things with lore and new technology, and this final chapter was no exception to that rule. However, Myst V is still powerfully tied to nostalgia, from its world-weary opening to core gameplay elements ringing similar to older concepts. End of Ages chooses to start you off in Kavir, where the first game ended and the full weight of Dunny as a culture first struck us back in 1993, but it doesn't feel the same as it did back then. It's not that it's just more lush, but it feels more broken. There's even a big crack through the middle of the floor. We also don't come here as the stranger, not this time. They're long dead, since this game is set 200 years in the future, roughly in the 1980s or so. Instead, we play as Uru character Dr. Watson, also known as Rawa. Yes, that Rawa, as he uncovers the Dunny Caverns and finalizes preparations by the DRC to open it for further exploration. Specifically, it's the story of how he uncovers material that ultimately leads to the Myst games and Cyan existing to spread knowledge of the Dunny, at least in universe. Yes, that means the games exist in universe. I know it's confusing, but it's also pretty unique for the time. Not a lot of media tried to defictionalize itself like this, and it really did feel immersive, even when it fell a little flat like this did. That's not all, of course. There's more than Rawa's story. You get to see the Great Shaft, and along the way, you learn of more details previously unreleased about the Dunny themselves. And of course, there's new mechanics. This was the first Myst game that allowed for real-time 3D WASD movement, which was rapidly becoming the standard for PC gaming, and also the first to include new graphical fidelity tools that would improve on past graphical fidelity. Not everybody could run this game at launch, just like Revelation and Uru before it. Then there's the return to a standard but more realistic cursor that allowed for choice in how the player moves, as well as doing away with the finicky animated cursor of Myst 4. Cyan and Ubisoft had learned their lesson there, and fans thanked them for it. It also introduced a new interface and experimented a little bit, despite not wanting to reinvent the wheel too much. Myst V decided to try out a new tablet drawing mechanic, similar to other games of the time like Okami, for its environmental-based puzzles. However, this tablet is often finicky, and sometimes the game doesn't understand what you drew, even if it's a very clear representation. No joke, when I was recently replaying the game, I got stuck in Nolaben for a good 10 minutes because I couldn't get the Bahro to understand a symbol I drew. Yeah. Unlike the tight, mostly fluid celestial brush in Okami, this just doesn't work as well, and I'm not quite sure why because the technology existed for it at the time. Meanwhile, other more traditional Myst-style puzzles appeared to be much easier throwbacks to Myst, but also included a number of timing-based puzzles, like Uru. And while the timing is a lot more generous on these than in Revelation, I'm not sure people really wanted to have to wait for a puzzle to be solved or things to happen in a Myst game. Myst V is very slow as a result, and perhaps not in a good way. A lot of players certainly didn't think so. All of this unfortunately turned off casual gamers and felt bizarre to Myst fans, unless they came from Uru, leading to a bit of a lackluster experience. And so, what was meant to be a celebration of the Myst franchise's life in terms of gameplay instead turned out to be a massive flop that only fractured the fanbase more. A shame too, because the characters and lore in End of Ages are very interesting indeed. You start End of Ages with no flashy intro, but a simple letter from Atris, a return to form of Myst's quieter nature as a series. Atris by now is an old man full of regrets, and Rand Miller delivers it in the appropriately world-weary tone. But wait, isn't this all a little odd? Shocking, even? Even for as final a game in the series as this, we've been told time and again that the ending can never truly be written. Yet here Atris is admitting the ending is about to be written. It smacks a little bit of being uncharacteristic, doesn't it? Listen, I don't expect the finale of a series that can be pretty dark sometimes to be all sunshine and rainbows, but this? Come on, you're better than this, Atris. You've accomplished a lot. Why burden your daughter like this and scare us long-term fans so bad? It's fitting in tone, though, since it does seem like Cyan's swan song too, their own regrets spoken through the character we all know and love so dearly. Ouch. Then there's Yeesha. We last see her as a carefree child in Revelation, then a passionate rebel of a teenager in Uru. But in Myst V, Yeesha has grown up into an embittered woman, burdened by her fate as the Grower, the one who's supposed to restore Dunny. Ironically, her name means laughter in Dunny, and yet she's dead serious here. Cute, I guess, but maybe a little overwrought. Regardless, Regan Altay plays this Yeesha with convincing burden, weight, and gravitas that blends characteristics of both her mother and her father, making for a fantastic portrayal of a woman who is taking the world on her shoulders when she really doesn't need to and only has herself to blame for it. Again, she seems to almost voice some of the same concerns and fears that Cyan did at the time, just like Atris. It's weirdly relatable, although some might find it whiny. I'm sure pretty much every Myst fan can see a little bit of themselves in this Yeesha. It's just a shame that, again, this fantastic portrayal of a conflicted woman is stuck in this game. And then there's the other character in this game, and I don't mean the Bahro. We'll discuss them later. I mean the other guy. The one who never shuts up and tries to be mysterious as well as a guide. The one that the game intends you to never be too sure if you should trust or not, despite the fact he comes off as mostly trustworthy. Escher.
And the other pedestals like it are not of Daphne.
What did you say? Yeah, I really hate this guy, but not for the reasons you'd expect or the reasons the game wants you to. I just hate him because his entire character is terrible, and he's incredibly, I mean incredibly, annoying. Like Cirrus, he's clearly meant to seem trustworthy but not be, and like Gen, he's clearly meant to be the traditional list dunny foil to Yeesha's progressive ideas, a time-honored conflict in fiction. But it just, I don't know, it never worked for me. It's not Cyan's fault, the script he's reading is good, it's just, I think it's the actor. He can put on a good dunny accent and read the script well all he likes, but he just doesn't impress me or convince me for how much he talks. I mean, the guy is supposed to be dunny, and he can't even say dunny correctly. Then, when he betrays you at the end, it comes out of left field, unless you saw his notes on Nolaben, or realize the linking skin on his shoulder comes from a still-living Bahro. Yes, it's creepy stuff, similar to Akinar's rooms in Myst, but it's still telegraphed pretty poorly, especially for a casual player. On top of this, his character is very poorly explained and extremely bland. There's nothing memorable about Escher, except the duck knee thing, and that's a bad look in the series known for characters that feel real. Escher doesn't. He'll never be as convincing as Gen, as desperately unhinged as Savidro, or as fascinatingly cruel as Cirrus and Akinar are. And it really does sour the whole game experience as a result. But then there's that one other group, the one other thing we need to address, that core splitting point I think of this game for Myst fans. And that's the least of our worries. The Bahro are weird. They're basically Myst's answer to aliens or molemen, these strange beings that can bend reality, break the rules of the art, and are in this game imprisoned by the power of the Great Golden Tablet. They bring so many new interesting questions to the franchise. Are they the source of the art? Did the art ever belong to the Dunny? If not, are the Bahro symbols the source of the mysterious world-connecting Garo Hevti? How on earth did the Dunny even manage to bring such powerful beings under their control anyway? Frustratingly, these questions are never answered, because the Bahro appear at the end of a story, a victim of timing and deadlines. Yet, they deserved more, so much more, and just never got it, not even in Uru Live. Unfortunately though, for as interesting as the Bahro are, they're problematic in this game. Very much so. Don't get me wrong, this is a neat concept and the mystery of it is intriguing, but they are still the biggest issue with Myst V, and probably the entire reason it feels more like Uru 2. The problem with the Bahro per se isn't that they're a bit science fiction for this otherwise fairly realism-based franchise. After all, Revelation already broke that mold. It's also not that they come out of nowhere, because they really didn't, at least if you played Uru or any of the short-lived Uru Live MMO. It's not even that they're a poorly designed creature, because they're really not. I mean, look at this thing. It's weirdly endearing even when it's a bit creepy, isn't it? Kinda like a strange cat, if it were shaped like a bug, had bat wings, and could warp reality. They're all in all pretty cool for ancient aliens. No, the issue with the Bahro, at least in Myst V, is that they're basically just used as puzzle solutions, and very little else. And their pickiness about some of the symbols on the tablets really doesn't help. Uru spent a long time trying to build the Bahro up as some mysterious force from outside the Dunny, these mysterious beast people that were wholly unexplained and could be mined for story indefinitely. They were going to be a big deal. In the final days of Uru Live, one was even the leader of a faction of dangerous Bahro, and it had part of its skin missing in the same area that Escher took the skin from for his linking needs. But none of that matters here, especially if the player, like me, never really got the chance to play much of Uru or Uru Live, so a lot of this world building and interesting lore for the Bahro just never really gets explained much. It's a symptom, I think, of Cyan just running out of time to do anything concrete with them, hence the weird tablet plot that has no connection to Uru or Myst. Again, it's a real shame the Bahro are trapped in this swan song of a game and given so little to do, so little context, when Uru made them so fascinating and so central to its plot. If they weren't, the least could have been something truly great. Myst V is a journey, just as the games before. You're asked by Yeesha, who carries the dual burden of the fate of both the Dunny and the Bahro, to carry some of the burden for her. Bring the 4 tablets to the keep, use them to unlock the gold tablet that for some reason controls the Bahro, and then choose who should have the power of it. The power of commanding an entire race of extremely powerful alien beings. The power of defining what a modern Dunny is. Along the way, Escher reminisces on his people and provides commentary in a slightly hand-holdy way, trying to convince you that he should have that power. Between the two, that timeless conflict about progression versus tradition occurs, one that even echoes the past themes of the Myst franchise. How power corrupts, the hubris of those who wield it, how those with power can destroy those lacking it, curiosity, wonderment, and more. And yet, it's all done in such a tone laced with sorrow and despair, it's deeply difficult to feel like it's Myst. It sometimes feels half-finished and hollow, not anything like the series that celebrates exploration and childlike wonder, nothing like the thing that I fell in love with. That's not really its fault, of course. Cyan was on a time crunch to get out of a contract, and was in deep despair themselves at the time. Rand Miller was even paying the skeleton crew of leftover employees from his own payroll. It was that bad. It's hard to look at Myst V and not hear the frustration of younger Cyan members in Yeesha's words, or the humble reminiscing of elder employees for days gone by in Escher's monologues, or the repeating "hey, remember when?" of puzzles and ages that sort of remind us of Riven or Myst or Uru. It's clear Cyan didn't want this to be the end, but they had no choice. You can't really end your franchise on a game that wasn't made by you, right? To that end, I truly believe Cyan did do the best they could to make Myst V wrap up everything and celebrate the life of Myst, while mourning its untimely death, even if it was understandably not quite up to their typical quality. And yet, it's still heavily and perhaps unfairly criticized by both Myst fans and casual fans alike. Its dreary tone is appropriate, but also a turnoff for those who like Myst and Uru's optimistic adventure and wonder. Half of its ages are absolutely gorgeous. Totemer alone is worth the price of admission. But others are half-finished, like Lakion. It brought much desired age concepts to light for the first time, and saved others from the dustbin, while also letting us explore old ages like Myst Island in a new light. But these ages also feel incredibly small and desolate in ways the other games just didn't, even with limitations. The tablet offers new kinds of puzzles to explore while still offering the typical Myst-style puzzle design, but These puzzles are usually just timing-based ones that often feel too easy, with too much hand-holding from Escher. The Bahro defined new ways to link and use the art, but this somewhat alienated older fans, who felt it was too much of a departure from established lore about how the art and linking is supposed to work. The game is gorgeous, and the graphics still hold up to this day, but that hardly matters when the game itself is so short. And perhaps worst of all, it keeps the lonely atmosphere of the other Myst games and does have some very good characters in it, but you always have the Bahro or Escher pulling you out of that, and frankly, the character portrayals there can sometimes feel uninspired. Yeesha can appear whiny, Escher comes off as a windbag who won't shut up about the glory days, and the Bahro really don't have any character to speak of. Is it any wonder that some fans see it as a perfect ending to Myst, while others prefer to pretend it's just Uru 2 or simply doesn't exist at all? It didn't have to end this way. It shouldn't have ended this way. And it's tragic it ended this way. Even with the game mostly holding up, even with all the hard work Cyan put into making this a good swan song for Myst, and even though my feelings towards it have softened over time, I just can't get into Myst V. It's not for me. It doesn't feel like Uru, it really doesn't feel like Myst, and I just can't see myself revisiting it again a third time. The heaviness and pain of it is a burden I just can't carry. Looking at how much it could have been great with more time, seeing the sad state the franchise was circa 2005, it all just hurts too much, like walking around that old ruined version of Myst Island just begging for something more to be there. Anything better than this funeral dirge of a send-off soaked with rainwater and lost potential. At least some crumb of hope, some promise the ending can't truly be written, anything to give me some hopium about this universe, even if Cyan were to cease existence forever. Was this truly, really the send-off Myst deserved? This amalgamation of forgotten dreams, lost plot pieces, half-decent characters, and Uru bits that never came to be? No, it can't be. The Myst fans won't allow it to be all that there is, shackled forever to this tablet of lost golden opportunity. The ending can't be written. The ending can never be written. Not like this. And as it turns out, Cyan agreed. It's currently 2026 as of the time of this video, and the ending still hasn't been written. Not quite. In 2015, Cyan Worlds tried something new. They had finally weathered their long, dark night of the corporate soul and escaped near death. Just barely. And they knew they had to do something very special to celebrate. You see, the anniversary of Myst was coming up, and it was a big one, because it was the 25th anniversary. The number so crucial to the Dunny culture, the number that defines the series. So, they took a risk and planted the seed of all things Dunny into the fertile ground of Kickstarter, just in time for Myst's 25th anniversary. And it exceeded their wildest expectations, millions of fans pledging to become the growers of a brand new lease on life for this classic puzzle game franchise. It actually got funded several times over, more than enough to jumpstart the flatlining heart of Cyan proper. And better still, Cyan had managed to wrest themselves from Ubisoft's contract. They even managed to get the distribution rights for Exile and Revelation, which had been unavailable to modern gamers for so long and no longer functioned on modern PCs. Now, for the first time ever, the tale of rescuing Relishan from Savidro on Jananin, and Yeesha's childhood struggles as the stranger battled with her brothers Cirrus and Akinar on Spire and Haven, were finally brought into the fold under one banner on Steam and Good Old Games for a new generation. The Myst family was once again complete, and Dunny breathed again. Cyan didn't stop there. In 2016, they funded and eventually released Abduction, a Kickstarter-funded throwback to Myst and Riven that played and worked much differently. Then in 2021, Cyan released the definitive Myst in VR, alongside plans to add and expand the Age of Rime to it. In 2018, another Kickstarter-funded game, Firmament, began development, and was released in early 2023. And most recently of all in 2024, the long-awaited Starry Expanse project, a fan-run take on a real-time Riven, finally saw the fruits of its labors made real in the Riven remake. Now, a brand new generation could explore the broken islands of Gen's hubris, as well as the mysterious island paradise of Atris that started it all. And for the first time ever, in VR. Meanwhile, Uru Live's third life as Mola continued to flourish and grow, with fans finally being able to add their own ages to dedicated servers called Shards, all fan-funded with tech support given by Cyan employees. There's still a thriving small community in the Caverns to this day, and events happening all the time. There's even a Myst tabletop RPG called Unwritten, based fittingly enough on the Fate system. And while I've never played it, I hear it nails the game's tone, while also allowing players to have adventures in either modern or old Dunny. How's that for an ending never being written? Though Cyan currently finds itself once more in dire straits in 2026, it's still a name that's trusted to bring creative, expansive worlds full of puzzles to solve, riddles to crack, strange realities to explore, and rich characters to meet to life. They are celebrated as pioneers in the adventure puzzle gaming genre, and have inspired countless other games to follow in the timeless ancient steps of the Dunny, Atris' family, and the Stranger. Robin Miller still makes music, and though Rand Miller has retired now, they both have inspired countless artists, musicians, and creatives worldwide. There's still Dunny Conlang enthusiasts, still those who play IoKeek on the weekends, and still the annual Mysterium convention that occurs every year, mostly inspired by Myst, alongside other Cyan endeavors. The future for Myst fans, new and old, even in trying times like these, is not just bright, it's blinding. A starry expanse full of so many stars, getting brighter and brighter all the time, new ones being added, and constantly pushing forward into the future. So in the end of ages really wasn't the end of ages after all. And so, my friend, I close, understanding now that in games and fandom, and in places that only books can take you to, the ending has not yet been written.